Out of the vast array of available NHL free agents, why did the Boston Bruins target Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov?
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be. Today is Tuesday, July 2nd, and I want to thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. As the Major League Baseball season is pretty much the sole point of focus right now, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. And before we get started, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media at Locked NHL Bruins. And you can find me, my hockey thoughts, dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. And I had a lot of thoughts yesterday, July 1st, as NHL free agency began, and it became clear that the Bruins were going to be targeting two specific players that they were indeed able to sign. Now, before we start, we will be getting into a whole wide range of topics over the next month. There is a ton to talk about, including the free agents that left the Boston Bruins and signed elsewhere, a bunch in Vancouver. There's updates on Jeremy Swayman to tackle. There's what the Bruins are still lacking that we need to talk about. A whole bunch of stuff coming up as we remain daily through the month of July. But today we're focusing on Elias Lindholm and Nikita Zadorov as Boston's primary free agent signings on Tuesday. Now, Don Sweeney, after the dust had settled, said that these are two players that they targeted and identified independently with the scouting staff because they check off boxes that they feel can help them win when it matters most. He said the Bruins have been very competitive over the past couple of seasons. They've had great success in the regular season, but not the success they expect in the playoffs. And these types of players should help in that regard. We'll talk also about Max Jones and Riley Tufte, who will help shore up the team's depth. But right now, we're focusing on Lindholm, who signed a 7-year, $7.75 per season million contract. He last played for the Vancouver Canucks, of course. He was traded there by the Calgary Flames, a fifth overall pick in 2013. He's entering his 12th NHL campaign. He will turn 30 on December 2nd. He was born in 1994, and he's coming off a season in which he scored only 15 goals and recorded 44 points in 65 games between the Flames and the Canucks, but he did have a pretty good playoff. Sweeney acknowledged Lindholm doesn't feel like he played as well as he was capable of last season, and he did step up his game in the playoffs. I believe he did have 5 goals, 10 points in 13 games. There's a better opportunity for him in Boston to play with an elite player in David Pastrnak, a top 6 role. He'll be the bumper on the power play. And, Sweeney said they have been pursuing this guy for a couple of years, really. And way back in the draft, they identified Lindholm as a player with a lot of Patrice Bergeron qualities. The scouting staff has been following him, watching him grow. Again, it's been about a 2-year pursuit of Lindholm, and they had questions as to whether he would ever get to free agency. They pursued him in trades last year with the Calgary Flames. They had chances at the deadline, Sweeney said, but it didn't materialize. So when he became available as a free agent, he's the guy that they immediately wanted to target. And, Lindholm acknowledged the fact that he has some Bergeron in his game. He doesn't want to be compared to Bergeron necessarily, which is completely fair. But you can't deny that exists in his game, that he is a very good two-way player. And he's a guy that can help this team immediately. Whether the contract will age well, we'll have to see. Lindholm said, as soon as Boston came in, it was exciting for himself and his family. He was pumped. He believes it's a good fit. And, playing in the league for a long time, you look at Patrice Bergeron as much as possible. He doesn't want to compare him to Bergeron, but he thinks he can bring a little bit of what he did. The Bruins are hoping he can bring a lot of what he did. And ultimately, the goal is to come in and win a Stanley Cup. A lot of history, a lot of great players in Boston. He's heard a lot about the city, the players, the families, and he's excited, obviously, to play alongside David Pastrnak. Lindholm, of course, is strong in the faceoff dot as well, 53.5% for his career, 56.4% last season. That was a big factor in the series against the Florida Panthers. They did not have reliable guys in the faceoff circle. And Charlie Coyle, he's kind of slotted in the third line center spot, but he did have a great year last year. Pavel Zacha did as well. Maybe he will move to the wing so that you still have Coyle, Zacha, and now Lindholm all in the top six. Matt Poitras, we'll touch on him later on this week, back at development camp, healthy. He could perhaps jump into the top six. Lindholm, though, has played top line role situations back in Calgary with Johnny Gaudreau, Matthew Tkachuk, and he is a guy that will slot in and play with David Pastrnak to form Boston's new best line. So why did the Bruins target Lindholm? Well, of course, they see his defensive responsibility. They see him proficient in the faceoff circle. They see that he has had some good offensive seasons in the past. He did have that 141 goal, 40 assists season a couple years ago. He did have a season where he finished second in Selke Trophy voting, 42 goals and 40 assists, I should say. He did have another season where he had 27 goals and 78 assists for his career. He's got 557 points in 818 games. So you average that over an 82-game season. He's averaging about 56 points per season over the course of his career, which kind of lines up with what Coyle and Zacha achieved last season. That was my one complaint with this signing, is that you kind of already have similar guys to Lindholm in Coyle and Zacha. And Lindholm's turning 30 here. Would it have been better to target someone with more offensive upside? That's really what the Bruins are lacking. We'll touch on that later in the podcast, but the Bruins clearly had targeted Lindholm for quite some time. Sweeney said they had been watching him since his draft year as a guy who could become what they had in Patrice Bergeron. That was back in 2013. The Bruins did not have a first-round pick that year. They had traded it to Dallas for Jaromir Jagr. Jason Dickinson was picked 29th overall. They weren't going to sniff the 5th overall selection. Lindholm does rank 3rd in his draft class for total points, behind only Nathan MacKinnon and Alexander Barkov. It's the length of the contract for me. It's his age, already close to 30. But for the time being, to begin this deal, it should work out pretty well for the Boston Bruins. Now, let's move on and discuss Nikita Zadorov as the podcast continues. It's the summertime now. Canada Day has come and gone. 4th of July is later this week. The sports just aren't sportsing as we like them to, and there's fewer games. FanDuel, however, is letting you keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open their app, dream up bets anytime you're in the mood. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with boosts and bonuses every single day. All you have to do is download the FanDuel app or go online, use promo code LOCKEDONNHL promo code LOCKEDON and start making the most out of your summer. Again, all summer long, you can get boosts and bonuses. You can bet on the Red Sox over-under for today against the Miami Marlins is set at 8 runs. So put some money down on that. See what happens. Get boosts and bonuses at FanDuel. Use promo code Locked On to get those daily boosts and bonuses. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine, free and available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. While you're on YouTube, check out Locked On Sports Today, part of the Locked On universe, all the latest news, opinions, and analysis. And you can get it free 24/7 on YouTube and the Amazon Fire TV channels app. The other significant signing that the Bruins made on Monday was Nikita Zadorov, a 29-year-old defenseman who last year played for both the Calgary Flames and the Vancouver Canucks. He signed a 6-year, $30 million contract with the Bruins and will help stabilize the left side and allow for some development for Mason Lohrei in less pressure situations. He's a huge blue liner. He was selected 16th overall back in 2013. Played 11 NHL seasons. Again, a product of that 2013 draft in which the Bruins did not have a first-round pick. And he will continue his career with the Boston Bruins after spending last season partly with Vancouver. He played for Calgary, Chicago, Colorado, and had been drafted by the Buffalo Sabres. 5 of his seasons were spent in Colorado. He had 6 goals, 20 points in 75 games between Vancouver and Calgary last season. His career high goals is 14. 22 points is his career high in terms of overall production, but his presence and his intimidation factor on the blue line is what the Bruins were valuing there. He said, Don Sweeney said that playing a lot of top 4 minutes in the playoffs against top guys comes with a bit of swagger, and Zadorov has certainly seen his game grow, probably get a little more defined in what he's capable of doing. Early in his career, he was a lot of nights trying to make an impact, and he made it for both teams at times, Sweeney acknowledged, like all young players do that are over-aggressive in that sense. But now he really understands his game, what he brings to the table. He's very excited, and obviously he might have a chance to play with Charlie McAvoy, and that is going to be a pretty booming pair. Lindholm even said in his Zoom availability that he was looking forward to being on the other side of Charlie McAvoy hits as a member of the Boston Bruins. Zadorov was very intent when he found out the Bruins had interest, and that's why they're excited to bring him in. He'll be able to complement a number of different partners on the back end. Playing for Daryl Sutter in Calgary was really important for him, Sweeney said, getting him into an understanding of what he's capable of doing each and every night. He had good playoff experience with Vancouver. They started to see the player that he's capable of being. His game continues to evolve, and Sweeney believes Jim Montgomery will be able to get a lot out of him. Zadorov said there were a few teams in the mix. They had a long conversation with Vancouver, and he said, why did he choose the Bruins? He said everything. The culture in the organization. He said he hadn't heard a bad thing in his 11 years about the Bruins culture, about the team, and the players who have come and gone there. So he said it was a no-brainer for him when he found out the Bruins were interested to come to play for an original 6 team. When he played in his first year, they had Zdeno, Chara, Patrice, Bergeron, all the guys that helped the Bruins win a cup in 2011, go to the final in 2013. And, he was asked point blank if he models his game after Zdeno Chara. He said it's hard. He's not even close to his level, but he does get the inevitable Big Z. And he said straight up, please do not ever call me Big Z again, because he's not even close to half of the Big Z. He was unbelievable, one of the best defensemen of all time, and definitely a lot to learn from him. He's still around, and he was one of his role models growing up because he had the same kind of physical play and size, and he wants to learn a lot from him. So that could be a good sign for sure. He was drafted as more of an offensive guy, and he had some offensive upside in junior when Buffalo picked him in the first round. He was running some power play in Buffalo and Colorado, and now he doesn't rely so much on the offensive part of his game. He worked a lot with Rick Tocchet, who helped him hone the details of playing defense, and the Bruins, he thinks he can fit into their game, kind of that simplicity, moving the puck up, jumping in where necessary, but being defensively aware and responsible, and he should be an asset for the Boston Bruins on the back end. Do we love the $5 million AAV? Do we love the fact that he's, again, going to be 30 next year? Not necessarily, but these two guys do have experience playing together, of course. But they had acknowledged, Lindholm and Zadorov had acknowledged that it would be a great place to play together, and it worked out perfect. It's their third team in the past 4, or his third team in the past 4 years, and hopefully he's able to stay there for a while. Again, both guys pushing 30, but they do have experience playing together in Vancouver and Calgary, and as a pair, as a tandem, they should come in and hit the ground running. Again, it's difficult to come into a new organization and not have that familiarity with some of the guys, but at least they know each other and will be able to hit the ground running. Overall, I think I'm pretty comfortable with these contracts. I think Lindholm may be a bit, I would have liked to have seen him come in closer to $7 million. You saw Steven Stamkos sign in Nashville for 4 years at $8 million. I was pretty outspoken about wanting to pursue him. Obviously, there needs to be mutual interest when it comes to free agent signings. Who knows if Stamkos had any appetite, but the Bruins still do lack some scoring. And while Sweeney says Lindholm and Zadorov should help them in the playoffs, I fully agree with that. They will be harder to play against, and they certainly are more difficult to score on with these guys in the lineup. A former Selke finalist, a huge body on defense. It allows, like I said, Mason Lohrei to not have the pressure of being in the top four. Maybe can run the second power play unit, get some more sheltered minutes. As impressive as he was, it's good not to throw him right into the fire right away. But the Bruins still need some scoring punch. The reason they lost to the Panthers wasn't necessarily because they're not a great defensive team. They weren't able to generate shots. They weren't able to generate offense. They still need that offensive punch, and that's something that we're going to talk about later on this week as to what they still need. But Lindholm, Zadorov, in a vacuum, those are two good signings. They were two guys that were highly sought after in free agency. They get them as a package deal, and they should make this team better, straight up. You can quibble about the term, about their ages, about the cap hits, but at the end of the day, these are two very good players who will make the Bruins harder to play against, full stop. The Bruins added a couple other guys who will challenge for some roster spots, and we'll discuss those two guys here as the podcast continues. A lot was made of Boston's pursuit to get back into the first round of the 2024 entry draft. They selected Dean Letourneau, 25th overall. We talked about how the Bruins now have two guys who were drafted high in the 2013 NHL draft in the first round. And they also signed a couple guys who were drafted in the first round of the 2016 NHL entry draft. They signed on Monday, first, Max Jones to a 2-year contract worth $2 million, a $1 million average annual evaluation. And he was selected 24th overall in 2016, played the first 6 seasons of his career with the Anaheim Ducks. He had 15 points in 52 games last season, after setting career highs in goals 9 and points 19 in 69 games the season before. Sweeney said Jones really covets the opportunity to come to Boston. He's been an intriguing player, not just because of where he was drafted, but his size, his ability to forecheck, the ability to possess pucks. He's shown a willingness to get to the net. He can finish a little bit more if he's pushed up the lineup and play with guys. That's what they're going to find out in terms of Max. So this is a guy that could be a value signing. He was, highly touted coming out of the NHL draft. He plays both sides. He has that possession game that Jim Montgomery wants to have. He is good on the forecheck and is a guy that they see could perhaps have some value there on a rather low risk, potentially high reward deal. He wasn't the most prolific scorer in junior. He played for the London Knights and the Kingston Frontenacs. He had 52 points in 63 games in his draft season. The Knights did have a winning team that year, and he was further down the depth chart behind Mitch Marner, Matthew Tkachuk. Christian Dvorak actually led the team in scoring that year. Again, his best years have been over the past couple, in and out of the lineup, but he did have 9 goals in 69 games in 2022-23, and the Bruins think they could have something there, a guy who just didn't quite pop with the Anaheim Ducks. Perhaps he will be able to find his game with Boston. They also signed Riley Tufte, a winger who was drafted 25th overall in 2016. And again, they're looking for value here from guys who didn't quite pop with their respective teams. This was the draft in which the Bruins selected Charlie McAvoy 14th overall. Trent Frederick went 29th overall. after Jones and Tufte. Tufte appeared in only 5 games with the Colorado Avalanche last season. He was drafted by the Dallas Stars originally, bounced back and forth between the AHL and NHL. He had 19 goals, 35 points in 63 games in his final season in the Stars organization, playing with the AHL's Texas Stars. Played 5 games for the Avs last season with a goal and an assist. 67 games with the Colorado Eagles, 23 goals and 22 assists for 45 total points. And again, he's a guy that perhaps could compete for some playing time in the bottom 6, likely destined for the AHL, but you never know. Jones probably has a bit more upside, but again, so many people put value on getting first round picks, developing players, and then having them pop as members of your organization. But there's also something to be said for looking back and seeing if there's value from recent drafts. Guys that were taken higher that still have some potential, that could indeed benefit from a change of scenery, and given an opportunity could become something. Tufte was a multi-category stud in the AHL and never quite able to catch on in Colorado or in Dallas. But this is a guy who has some upside and has some potential. Could use his size a bit more by all accounts. He is 6'6", 236 pounds, but he has been unable to hold an NHL role despite a few call-ups from Dallas and Colorado. So maybe the Bruins can mine something out of him. At the end of the day, the Bruins got the 2 big fish that they were after in Lindholm and Zadorov. It appears as though they are done for the time being. We will discuss tomorrow on the podcast the latest with Jeremy Swayman. That has yet to be announced. And we'll discuss why. We'll discuss what's next. We'll discuss what the holdup is. And maybe touch on some of these other depth signings that they made as well. In terms of Cole Koepke, Jeff Veal, some of these guys that you may have heard about yesterday. Lindholm, Zadorov, the Bruins believe they are the perfect fits. Time will tell if their contracts age well, but for now, I'm pretty happy with what they were able to get, what they bring to the Boston Bruins. I do believe this team could be better than last season, but there also are some holes on the roster. There also are some areas where they need to improve, what they're going to be looking at internally, and we'll discuss that again later this week, looking at opportunities for Fabian Lysell and Georgi Merkulov that now exist. That's it for today's episode, my friends. Thank you so much for joining me here on Locked On Boston Bruins. Please do subscribe to keep up on all the latest on YouTube, on your favorite podcast app, and we'll be back tomorrow to discuss anything else that breaks today, as well as the latest with respect to Jeremy Swayman. Take care, friends.